Get ready for Real Talk Radio. You're listening to the National Intel Report with your host, John Stadtmiller.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, Mr. Gerald Celente is online with us. Buongiorno, my friend.
Buongiorno, John.
How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
It's been a while. I've been off sick at the network, and as it always times out, I miss one of my favorite people on air, and that, of course, being you.
Thank you.
Well, and how are things going with the TrendsJournal?
Well, the TrendsJournal's going great. We had a spring issue came out, and, it's history before it happens. For example, everything that's going on with this Benghazi incident, we wrote about it in the autumn 2000 TrendsJournal in chapter and verse. And so the things that they're covering in the news now, we had long covered before it happened. We had the details coming out as they come out. And really, that's what makes the TrendsJournal so different than anything else. It's truly a journal. It's covering events as they occur. And then what we do is we show what their implications are going to be and how they're going to affect us socially, economically, politically, etc. So it really covers the times like no other magazine, and also projects into the future. There's really nothing else out there that does. Well,
what did you call back in 2007?
Well, the Panic of 2008. We even took the domain name out.
I'm just rather fascinating the way this thing is going down. I'm looking economically. I'm starting to see reports, front page news down here, and what I term to be the Austin Un-American Statesman was saying that the counties outside of a 3-county area down here in Texas, well, they're becoming just as broke as Atlanta, and evidently Atlanta's suburbs or connecting counties are going belly up at a record pace. Things are continuing to deteriorate economically, but, I just don't hear that on the news. I just don't see it.
Well, you don't see it because, number one, that's not what the prostitutes talk about. They talk about news that's exploitative, titillating, and sensationalist. And they really don't talk about the hard facts. Number two, they're not going to talk about things that are going to hurt their advertisers. They don't want gloom and doom. Look, I've been on, you name the show, I've been on it. And I used to be on, for example, the Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS Morning News. They used to fight to get me on New Year's Day. And I could tell you every time I went on these shows, many, many times, it would always begin with, now, Mr. Celente, it's early in the morning, and we don't want to frighten people with bad news. Mm-hmm. So what can we talk about that's positive? I remember that. I've heard it so many times. Well, so it's who they are.
I just, the handmaidens of the Wall Street gangsters and the associated ones, I found your intro here into the Spring Trends Journal that it's official in the West, democracy is dead. And this came out of a paper of record, the New York Times, on April 17th. Can you fill in with a little bit more color on that one?
Yes. Again, what we do is we read the news. We follow the news around the world. And we look for the current events forming future trends, and we read between the lines, so to speak, in many of these articles. And there was this article with the headline, Eurozone Crisis Has Increased IMF's Power. And it goes on to say, and these are, again, the words coming from the handmaidens, as you used, or the prostitutes, as we say, of the New York Times. And they talk about Christine Lagarde, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. It's actually the International Mafia Federation. And they say Miss Lagarde's presence reflected her close, long-time friendship with Mr. Schwabler, the German head over there, or the finance minister. And it goes on to say, the IMF has more say over crisis management than many Eurozone members, and Miss Lagarde has become a quasi-head of state. Capisce? She's become a quasi-head of state. The banks are heads of state. They're saying it right here. They're sitting at the table. They're pulling the levers. They're making the decisions. And it goes on to say that Miss Lagarde has become, whose views carry more weight than those of many elected leaders, and that Miss Lagarde helps impose order on quarreling national leaders.
Well, I'm rather fascinated by this because I guess these people, they don't understand. They're declaring the West to be dead. But I don't think that they understand that we are not a democracy. We're a limited republic or a government under the law or under the Constitution. And, well, the guys of yesteryear, you know, the old stodgy guys with the white wigs and the quill pens, they didn't want a king. They didn't want a democracy. They wanted a republic, so we drew up some simple guidelines that was pretty simple that a sixth grader at the time could read and understand. And these people keep referring to the world's democracies, which has become a buzzword for, as you described, the financial heads of state. The governments are irrelevant anymore because who controls them and the corporations?
That's it. And as you've heard me say also, people rail against Obama and they call this a socialist state. No. The merger of state and corporate powers, by definition, is called fascism. And that's what we have now. This is fascism. And you can see the fascism in not only the too big to fails, not only in how the IMF and the other, you look at, I don't care, name the country. Name the country, the banks are sitting at the head of the table. And it's no different here. I mean, how does it, does everybody out there, John, have attention deficit disorder? Don't they remember in 2008 when Henry Frankenstein Paulson, the former CEO of the Goldman Sachs gang, then head of the United States Treasury, announced to we the people that we had to bail out the too big to fail banks, including the Goldman Sachs gang that had made a bad bet with AIG, and nobody knew what an AIG was then, and still don't. But we had to give them $13 billion to cover their bad bets. You can't make this stuff up.
There are a lot of people, Gerald, that are running around with their ears plugged and saying they don't want to hear it. In your TrendsJournal, was this an actual conversation you had with a guy by the name of Frank?
Yes. This is a composite of those. I just got an email from, I get these all the time, for the people canceling. They don't like my language. They don't like my name calling because we have Trends in the News features every day. I do the news every day. And we see it over and over again. And the people will say, you're calling these people names. Of course I am. Well, you sound angry. Of course I'm angry. Oh, no. Don't be angry. Be more polite. Oh, yeah, you be more polite as a thief has a gun to your head and is raping you. Well, and that's what's going on.
Well, and I'm reading this and I'm going, this has to be Gerald's idea of a joke, putting this in his newsletter. But as I'm reading this, and I'm going down the laundry list, Gerald, Frank is saying here that they don't want to hear things are getting worse, even though they know it. They don't want to hear the big corporation control the politicians who control their lives, even though they know it. They don't want to hear that their government keeps taking away their freedom, even though we know it. And they don't want to hear the good jobs are gone and they're not coming back, even though they know it. They don't want to hear about drone attacks, civil wars, foreign wars, uprisings worldwide, even though the media try to sanitize it here in this country. We know that it's going on. We have the internet. We have the information available. They don't want to hear that the politicians and the policymakers and the generals and the bankers who created the problems will never be able to fix the problem that they created in the first place. And they don't want to hear that their food, water, and air and land is poison. All these things are going around, but there are actually people that do not want to hear it. They feel that ignorance is bliss, and as long as they don't know who's swinging the sword of Damocles over their scrawny little necks, that somehow this is going to hurt less when they get their heads lobbed off.
Hey, all aboard, next train to Auschwitz. That was one of the covers we had, and that's what goes on.
You know, I just, I am simply amazed that this is going on. And by the way, my little birds are telling me that we're going to be rolling into Syria. We've already pumped in $500 million through two Secretary of States, Hillary and John Kerry, which has been mysteriously out of the limelight in the news. But as these little problems that the White House keeps facing, we've pumped in $500 million to destabilize the Assad government in Syria, and it looks like we're going to be going in.
Well, I don't know if we're going to go in a way that it's going to be us. And again, we have been reporting on that on an ongoing basis, the amount of money being funneled in. But I think it's going to go through Israel.
But don't you find it strange that these Arab countries we're talking about are the ones that resisted the funny money people and the usury? That couldn't have anything to do with this, could it?
No. Same with Libya.
All right, we'll take the break. We'll be right back with Gerald Celente.
The 5 self-evident truths of the Declaration of Independence are the standing definition of our Republican form of government. Each unalienable right has an attached duty because we are all created equal. Like the right, the duty is permanent and non-transferable. There can be no paper to lien the right and no paper to waive the duty. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed does not mean if you can think of it, you can consent to it. Truly, it names a condition where a right must be held without violation of its duty by both parties who can then consent. Our grand jury has been destroyed without the consent or the right. Return the grand jury customarily impaneled by the elected county sheriff and one where people can appear with information. McGilvery Machine Company, Reading, Michigan. Innovative research and development of prototype industrial equipment since 1988.
Don't answer it! How can I stop these annoying collection calls?
Imagine being free from your debt without settling and with no payment plans, no negotiating or filing bankruptcy, and no attorneys. What if you could eliminate the risk from all your unsecured debt in about 90 days and keep all your money? You can. It's called Zero Debt Guarantee, and it works. There's no other program of its kind on the planet, and we guarantee the results in writing. Call now, 800-477-9256. Let our team of experts provide you with resources to fight back, stop collection calls, and prevent and stop wage garnishments and bank levies. If you're facing foreclosure, we can help. Don't go it alone. Get free information now by calling 800-477-9256. Talk to an expert who has also completed our program. Call 800-477-9256 for free info, or go to ZeroDebtGuarantee.com. That's 800-477-9256, or go to ZeroDebtGuarantee.com.
With financial uncertainty circling the globe due to job losses, decline in the housing market, a climate of corruption, bailouts, currency rigging, and unfair competition, many are once more turning to precious metals as the only hedge against the uncertainty of the future. With the U.S. House conducting hearings on proposals to confiscate workers' personal retirement accounts, including 401ks and IRAs, this is the time to secure your assets. Call Republic Trading Group today, 800-691-7898 before this happens, and find out how easy it is to convert your existing IRA and in some instances your 401k plan into real wealth now. Don't let the ravages of hyperinflation caused by the massive increase of fiat currency now flooding world markets affect your retirement account. Call RTG at 800-691-7898 and experience the security and peace of mind that only real gold and silver can offer. That number again is 800-691-7898. Call now.
In response to one of your video segments of Trend in the News, there was somebody that contacted you and said, first of all, Gerald, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It has and had been pretty lonely out here among my family who refuse to see what's going on. And while my family is still blissfully living in the dark, I'd like to report that I am finding more and more people who do get it. In fact, just today I found another aware person who is deeply concerned, along with her husband, and I recommended your site. I told them that your news service is indispensable. Since this person is in contact with many people each day, I'm hoping that I planted a small seed that will eventually harvest many subscribers. Let's hope. And, you know, this is the strangest thing. And Gerald, I chalk it up to human nature. If people understand human nature, then they'll understand while some people want to remain ignorant, while other people have a greater love, just not for themselves, but for things and ideas and concepts that are bigger than themselves. And what I think has happened here that has fueled this furious fire over the years is that type of reminder and that information that would shore up and bolster who we are and what the laws really are and what our country is really about. That background has been wiped out.
Totally wiped out. I mean, did anybody, you mentioned it, you know, that these guys with wigs, did anybody remember the Founding Fathers? What this country stood for, what it was built upon? And, you know, this isn't a fairy tale with everything was rosy, you know. There were some terrible atrocities that were committed in this government and of the people and by the people. But the principles of this country were the greatest in the world. And that's why the whole world wanted to come here. And whatever happened to not becoming involved in foreign entanglements? Try that one on. Has everybody forgot that?
Well, Gerald, I just read something the other day. Since 1974, the United States Navy has ran up a little tab over there protecting the Straits of Hormuz, and the tab for the American people, some $8 trillion.
You know, John, I wrote trend tracking back in 1988. Far better than Megatrends, Time magazine. Anyway, at that time, the Cold War had cost us $13 trillion. And who I believe was the greatest president of my lifetime, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, 2-term Republican president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, upon leaving office, warns the American people that the military-industrial complex is robbing us of the genius of our scientists, the sweat of its laborers, and the future of its children. And you tell people that, and the next comment is, hey, how about the Yankees? You think they have a good third baseman this year? Or think they'll be? It's like you never said it.
Well, and there is magical things happening within the media that somehow, I mean, and you go to Fox News, and they're supposedly the conservative people out there, Gerald, but yet in the next breath that they will tell you that our soldiers that are over there still dying in wars we should not be fighting to protect that oil / support for U.S. dollar. Remember when Billy Clinton, we've got one of the largest bituminous, lowest sulfur coal on the face of this planet in this country. But guess what's underneath it? There is enough oil sitting out under the Rockies to the west that are bigger than any oil fields the Middle East ever had.
John, just look at what's going on with the hydrofracking. this past weekend when nobody was watching, Obama signed a deal right down there for Texas, and they're opening up now to start exporting the natural gas. And wait, time out. What do you mean you're going to export it? I thought you guys were talking about all these years that you're going to make us energy independent.
They've been saying that for 50 years.
Yeah, and now we can become energy independent. Oh, you're exporting it. Oh, I got it. So you can make more of a profit and keep the price higher, and we're subsidizing you because they also opened up 700 million acres of our land to the guys that they give a good deal to because, hey, they slipped them a couple of campaign dollars. You know, I began my career, I used to run political campaigns in Westchester County at a graduate school. And that's the richest county in the country. And from there, I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. And for many years, in about 74 to 79, I was one of the chief government affairs specialists for the chemical industry in D.C. So I know what goes on. And as I mentioned, you know, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan, he's a contributor to the TrendsJournal. We're very good friends. So we're guys that have seen pretty much, you know, a lot of it. And I could tell you this. It's disgusting how cheaply you could buy off politicians.
Or buy
Their
off...
payoff prices are so low. I guess that's why this has become such a bargain hunting nation.
Well, we've got to keep supporting, we got to keep up that oil bourse. We've got to keep supporting the failing dollar. Gerald, how many trillions of dollars have we just wasted, thrown away into oblivion with all of these Middle Eastern wars? And it looks like we're not quite done with it. I just got an email here that the Russian Mediterranean fleet, it looks like they're getting out of the Middle East and they're coming home.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
Do you flinch when a police car appears in your rearview mirror, or you get pulled over? Are you squeamish when an envelope arrives in the mail with the return address of a court, a government agency like the IRS, or some law firm? Would you like to escape government agency harassment? Then visit escapeharassment.com. George Bush allegedly says, the government constitution is nothing but a doggone piece of paper. Well, that's a contract. A contract is an offer acceptance of that offer, at which point a contract arrives by law and the offerer can no longer withdraw the offer. We teach, do not accept. That way there is no contract or agreement for you to go to their court or private club meeting. To escape government agency harassment like the IRS, visit escapeharassment.com. This is a tried and proven experienced process, not experimental, with a money-back guarantee that it works and success testimonials from previous students. Remember, escapeharassment.com. That's escapeharassment.com.
Here at Republic Broadcasting Network, we have been building our online store. Well, we have been focusing on bringing you the best talk show host in the country. Here at Republic Broadcasting Network, we also want our listeners to have products they can use every day and in times of emergency. We have added new products each week to our store. Your support of this network, plus products at the best prices, is a win-win situation. Check out our new store. Go to our website, republicbroadcasting.org, and click on the online store located at the top of our website. Together, we can continue to grow RBN and help our listeners prepare for the future. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and click on our online store or call us at 1-877-605-9200.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
You're tuned in to the National Intel Report, the Real Talk Radio Show.
If there are some people with some questions out there for Mr. Celente, 800-313-9443. We'll field a few calls for the man today, I should say. Gerald, we can see where the true influences are coming from. We know what's running the world. We know where the control factors are. And I have, through 6 years almost now of depression-like numbers, as a matter of fact, depending on where you are geographically in this country, it may appear even worse than depression-like numbers. But everybody seems to be whistling through the graveyard. We are not talking about hauling anybody off in front of a court or charging them for malfeasance or theft or anything else. We're going to keep printing money to keep bailing things out, which this is not our fault. We did not do this. I don't know about you, Gerald. Did you benefit from the real estate bubble, rolling all this stuff into derivatives? And I didn't benefit. Where was my check in the mail?
Yeah, I know.
And here they all are, worldwide. They're all walking around playing pocket pool, whistling through the graveyard.
It's a takeover. It's a takeover in every aspect. I mean, I think we're both old enough to remember those quaint old days. Remember when people actually used to own the pharmacies before there was CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens? And now you go to college and you get to work for one of them? Do you remember the days when people used to own haberdashers and women's clothing shops, and now all you have is Macy's and Targets and other big chains, Kohl's? And remember the days before Walmart? And hey, I got a funny one for you. There used to be a thing called hardware stores before they had Home Depot and Lowe's. Oh, and a stationery store. Why, we had one up right here in Colonial Kingston, O'Reilly's. O'Reilly's is gone. And as all of them are, now we have, Office Depot and Staples. So now, we're in graduation season. All of these wonderful kids getting out of school, colleges, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 in debt, and holding degrees of worthlessness. Where are they going to get jobs? What corporation are they going to work for? I have a new name for America. Slavelandia.
I recently read an article at the Monsanto company, the executive officer, Hugh Grant. He made a statement recently. He said, there is a strange kind of reverse elitism. He said, if I'm going to do this, then everything else shouldn't exist. And what he was talking about, he said that there's a space in the supermarket shelves for all of us. Now, in Europe, many countries will not deal with genetically modified foods, call them frankenfoods. And evidently, and I read this article, and the man is truly, Gerald, truly dismayed that the stuff that Monsanto is doing and destroying crops and all the negative health effects from this, he really doesn't understand this because, he maintains that, food is important and the world needs to be fed, and, not everybody can afford organic food. And I'm listening, I'm going, my God in heaven, this man, as a CEO of this corporation, actually believes in what he is doing. And then I thought, organic food, grown where? Out of what soil that's been burned out years ago from chemical fertilizers. And the man is fully justified in his march to continue the frankenfood industry. And they just don't understand why people in this country, Gerald, don't want this stuff. We can't even get laws passed for labeling telling us this we're eating this stuff. 90% of the wheat and the corn in this country is now Franken stuff.
I know. And it's not that he doesn't understand. These are sociopaths. And that's who these other world leaders are. The ones that start wars, lose them, kill people, and have no regrets. And we got this guy over there, this clown congressman. You know, you remember Anthony Weiner?
Oh, yes.
You know, the guy that was, showing his...
Yeah.
You'll find on Facebook.
Uh-huh.
He's running for mayor.
And it looks like he might win.
But, I mean, they have no shame. These are sick people. They're sociopaths and psychopaths.
Who was the mayor in Washington, D.C. that got caught with his crack in his whores?
Yeah.
Marion Barry.
Yeah, and how about the guy just now in Toronto? You know, they just busted this mayor apparently, smoking crack or doing something.
But people don't understand, Gerald, why things are falling apart. They don't understand why cultures and societies, we're at Mach 3 with our hair on fire and the spiral downward. We have nothing. We have no honesty. We don't have honest money. We don't have honest government. We don't have honest anything. And they're wondering, of what standard do they compare anything with when all of this stuff is all around us?
Again, I tell the story when I came back. I'd never been to Berlin before. And I was there last April, not this past April, but a year ago. And within an hour, I looked in this beautiful Berlin had to be grander than Paris before it was bombed out. And I said, how do the Germans, of all people, this grand city, and you see so much of it was destroyed during World War II, how did they let a two-bit freak destroy their country? Saying these are the Germans, Bach, Beethoven, Goethe, Einstein, Wagner, the highly educated. In the 1930s, they were at the top of civilization, culturally, scientifically, philosophically. How did they let a two-bit freak destroy their country? And I'm of Italian descent. Now, not for nothing. Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Puccini, Rossini. Go down the list. And we eat better than the Germans. How did they allow a cartoon character destroy their country? And I came home, and by the way, that's why I bought these colonial buildings that I bought over here in Kingston. The 1750 Franz Rogan House, the 1763 Dr. Jansen House, and the Academy, 1774, the most historic corner in the U.S., the only place where there's a stone building that predates the Revolutionary War on each corner. And I was going to leave this country. I was down in Uruguay, Chile, Argentina. I had enough. And I came back and I said it hit me. I said, you can't run away. There are two-bit freaks everywhere. And we have them right here. I mean, you want to talk about a cartoon character? How about George W. Bush? I mean, how about Obama? How about Slick Willie Clinton taking us to war, robbing us of our money, abrogating us of our rights? And I said, if we don't stand up and speak out and have another revolution, then we're doomed. And I don't want a bloody revolution. I'm not for that at all.
I want a restoration.
I want one of the spirit, the heart, and the mind.
I want a restoration.
Exactly. Amen. Restoring America. Amen.
Art, you're on with Gerald Celente. Hello, Art.
Mr. Stat Miller, Mr. Celente.
How you doing?
It's so good to hear your voice again, Mr. C. Got a question for you, but before I get to my question, since you wanted to take a little trip down memory lane there, before we had Walmart, what did we have? We had the local Five and Dime, the local Mercantile, the Seed and Seed, and full-service gas station.
Yep.
We actually had people...
all gone the way of the dinosaur.
Well, I mean, look, you got to understand what corporations do. They try to maximize their profits, so how do they do that? Well, they'll cut services. The guy that used to check your oil, that would check your windshield wiper fluid, that would check the pressure in your tires, that would do anything, fill up your tank, and he didn't expect anything but a thank you and he'd tip his hat and you were on your way.
Well, there's something else, and I'm not a libertarian. I'm a political atheist. I don't put myself in any corner. I believe in regulations. I believe in stop signs. I believe in laws, and Teddy Roosevelt, among all of them, they put laws into place in the 19th and 20th century that prevented the robber barons from robbing us. The Robinson-Patman Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the Clayton Antitrust Act, and the Glass-Steagall Act in the banking sector. And that, for example, if I wanted to open up a store and I wanted to buy 7 dozen of, let's say, spoons, and you, John, wanted to buy 700 dozen, guess what? We'd both get the same price.
Yeah.
Art, what's your question, sir?
Yeah, those were the days when penny candy actually cost a penny. Now it's 10 cents. Mr. Celente, looking back at what we saw happen in Cyprus with the 60 to 80% of the people's money being siphoned off to save their economy, which we saw how well that worked out. And now, seeing what they're getting ready to do throughout Europe, I forget what they're calling it, but they're not calling it the same thing as they called it before. They're calling it something different now, but it's still the same thing. How do you see that playing out? And would you agree with me that since nothing was done in Cyprus, the Cyprus people didn't lose their marbles over what happened there? Do you think Europe is going to lose their marbles, or do you think they're going to get away with it? And once they're done with Europe, how long do you think before we start seeing that here in the United States, just as we saw the Obama administration try to do what Argentina did with 401ks, which eventually led to the assassination of Justice John Rolls?
I think that, I was talking to John before we went on the air about this. To some extent. First of all, Cyprus is a tiny country. To me, that was the test case to see what they could get away with. And I followed it very closely. And first they were going to take the money, they called it a tax on deposits. You're stealing your money. And then they said, well, okay, we won't steal the money unless they have over 100,000 euros in the account, then we'll steal it. And so they did. And the people protested. Protests only go so far. Protests are totally useless. What they do is they allow people to vent anger, they get it out of their system, they go home, and the criminals continue on the course where they were before. Unless you have a movement. And the only protest that I know that worked, and again, I'm always looking for more information, and anybody that could turn me on to something new, I love to see it, is the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall came down, and I know people that were there. When the people refused to leave, day after day, night after night, week after week, they came, the crowds grew, and no one could move them. Here, they have a protest, everybody goes home, calls it a day. Same thing in Europe. So there has to be a movement for it to change. I believe it's going to break apart at some point in Europe. It's a Ponzi scheme. They're buying up bonds just like they're doing here, an unlimited amount of bond borrowing and buying by the central bank. And we have it here, too. They call it QE's, quantitative easing, and all it is rigging the bond market in front of our eyes. It's no secret. They're doing it. And they're just as they rig the LIBOR rates, to the tune of what? Some $700 trillion? So what I believe is going to happen in the States, if there's a bank run, you'll get your money. But it's not going to be worth the paper it's not printed on. In other words, they'll devalue the currency. That's what they did with the Federal Emergency Banking Act of 1933. They just did it differently. Back then, they forced you to turn in your gold at $20.62 an ounce under penalty of law. After they had all the gold in, and the dollar in those days was pegged to gold at $20.62 an ounce, they repegged the dollar to gold at $35 an ounce, which means that your currency was devalued by some 70%. So that's what I believe they'll do. They'll give you your money, but your money's not going to be worth anything. They did it before, and they'll do it again.
Art, thank you for your call. I appreciate it very much. So they're going to keep, nobody is selling any bonds. The banks themselves are buying the bonds. How can you sell a bond to somebody? I mean, I would like to see this super slick salesman, Gerald, that would try to sell a bond to somebody and say, oh, by the way, there's not going to be any return on this.
I know.
You know, and so we're watching our own government, what is it, $86 billion a month, monetizing our own debt. Have people been noticing fuel prices, food prices? I kid you not, Gerald, I'm not a big fan of fast food restaurants, but they do come in handy every once in a while if you need to grab a bite and you're limited on time. I literally went to a Wendy's restaurant for 2 hamburgers. No fries, no drinks, no meals. 2 hamburgers, $9.02.
Wow. Boo, you went to Wendy's. The last time I caught you, you went to Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, I do have...
Oh, you know my motto, John. Break the chains.
Break the chains.
Yep, we have to break the chains, because here's the deal. These companies work on such thin margins that once they start, their profitability starts to erode, it cascades. If people started breaking the chains, and it's the perfect name for them, too. They really chain stores. They have you chained. Again, I call this Slavelandia. And once we break the chains, to me, then we will restore our freedom. Freedom starts it starts with the coinage, and we don't have it anymore. We've lost it. You know, as I mentioned, I do trends in the news every day. Today, the one I did was a lot of issues, but I started reading all the news in the last 2 days of what China is buying up, where they're buying it up, and what they're buying up. And I said, well, China is in the business of business. America's in the business of war. Who's winning? We lost every war since World War II. And we spent how many hundreds of trillions of dollars? Could you imagine if those $100 trillion went into building America? Look at our rail system. It's a disgrace.
Well, Gerald, they wanted to be environmentally friendly. They wanted to turn rails to trails.
Isn't that disgusting? We're having a fight up here with one of the fellow that's out, the editor of the Trends in the News features, Ryan Lennox, lives in this little town, Phoenicia, in the Hudson Valley here. The Hudson Valley is gorgeous, and it was called the Borscht Belt. It was a big. Years, more than half a century, the greatest comedians came out of this area. And they used to come up by train and by boat, and they used to have the trains actually going out to the resort areas. And now they want to rip up the last rail. They have this is in the Catskill Mountains. You know how many hundreds of trails we have over here? And they want to rip up the last trail. So he's fighting it. And anybody that wants to help us win this, you can find us by just going to TrendsJournal.com, and my email is there. With the last rail, and they want to rip it up. And I'm saying, no, you got it backwards. Let's restore the rails. Let's make the same reason it happened before, as you said it before, by the way. You said, let's restore America. Let's restore this nation, but I don't want those antique trains running on it. We could use them in a museum. Let's put on 21st century people movers. Let's build the American model of the future. That's the other thing that these people forget everywhere. Do you think China, Japan would have been anything? It's not our manufacturing that made them. They sold out our minds, our brain power, our technology. They could have never invented this stuff. They sold it when they sold our manufacturing. So what I'm saying is let's restore America and rebuild it.
You mentioned, and somebody had suggested this to me, Gerald, that why is it that we cannot bust up the money monopoly in this country using the Sherman antitrust?
That's what I'm saying. And you go back, people ask me, well, Celente, you're always complaining. No, I'm not. I'm telling you the trends and showing you where it's going. I'm in the catbird seat, and I'm showing you where we're heading. Now, if you don't want to hit the iceberg, you put back in place the things that worked before. You remember before NAFTA? What this country was like? You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. All you have to do, if you care to, anyone, look at the facts. You said it, Sherman antitrust, Robinson-Packman, Clayton antitrust, Glass-Steagall.
Yes. Yeah, by the way, they were going to restore the Glass-Steagall Act. What happened?
Well, it became a Dodd-Frank. And then it became a Nothing-Frank.
There you go.
It's frankly a piece of crap right now.
And how is it that these men can walk around and literally watch their country falling, just crumbling right underneath their feet?
They're sociopaths, I'm telling you.
My God,
they have
Gerald.
a sickness. They have a mental illness.
But see, you're going to have a problem trying to convince other people that there is this level of insanity and greed. You have a hard time trying to tell them because...
Well, then, great. Don't tell them you like commuting to work, going lousy traffic for an hour and a half each way. You love not having time spending with your family. You love the fact that you can't put money in the bank and get any interest on it, and they're forcing you to gamble in the stock market. If you do have any money, you like the fact that your kids are living at home after they got out of college, and they're going to be indentured servants the rest of their lives. You like that fact? As I say, all aboard. Next train to Auschwitz.
They just people just don't want to understand why they're in the shape that they're in. Back in the 60s, there was a song entitled, "I Just Dropped In to See What Condition My Condition Was In."
Yep.
They're afraid to do it. They know they know that it's bad. We'll get caught up in political theater. We've got how many? We started with Fast and Furious, a year and a half ago? Here's the Attorney General of the United States. By the way, who was behind that was Hillary Clinton, and this is supposed to demonstrate why we need this UN small arms treaty, that we have to limit this stuff. And this brazen, and I will not use the term that is running through my head right now, gets in front of Congress. She's skating out of Dodge. She thinks she's going to be president in 2016.
I'm crazy people.
I'm waiting for them to throw Eric Holder under the bus here because somebody's got to go down.
Never. Nobody. No. You remember when this IRS thing broke. Go back to the news. Low-level employees.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Anybody that knows it, anybody that works for the government has absolutely no say about anything. All they are slaves in Slavelandia. They carry out orders. They have absolutely no courage. All they are minions for their masters, and they have the nerve to say the IRS thing was carried out by low-level employees. Because, John, those are the only ones that pay the price. It won't reach the top. Look, has anybody ever pushed the fact, why did we invade Iraq, and who knew what when? Well, let's not talk about that. That's old history. Let's move on. But you, on the other hand, if you break any minor law, I'm a law enforcement officer, and I'm here to enforce the law, break down your doors, and rob you of every rights that you think you had. Look at the spectacle in Boston. Look what happened to the American Constitution and the Bill of Rights. 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment rights gone. No warrants going into people's homes, forcing them out with their hands up, closing down an entire city. to forget a 19-year-old kid.
Gerald,
100 square miles.
We only have a couple minutes left. The word I got about Ambassador Stevens is his job over in Libya, along with his 3 friends, was to make sure that the heavy armament, now that they were done popping Libya inside out, was to go to the anti-Assad forces in Syria. Have you heard anything like that?
I've heard that, they were trying to get him back from them to bring over to the other guys. Yes,
yeah.
I've heard that as well. But again, here's the deal. Pick up today's New York Times. It's the only paper, and I don't like the Times. I read it because I have to. It's the only paper that reports the dead soldiers in Afghanistan or elsewhere they're being killed. Nobody cares about them. You get an ambassador. He's not even an ambassador. I think it was a consulate.
Mm-hmm.
He gets killed. Oh, my God. Oh, wow. Oh. But, hey, GIs get killed. They're only government issue. Who cares?
And after all, they're fighting for our freedoms over there. Wrong. Gerald, we're out of time on this segment. I thank you so much. Good to hear from you again. TrendsJournal.com. Take a look at it, folks. You can handle the truth. Trust me. If you don't know, you can't prepare. Gerald, thank you.
Thank you. All the best.
All right, you too, sir. We'll take the break. 90 seconds. We'll be right back.
Now. 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 Now.